You're listening to I Have Some Notes, a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported.
Hey, Scott, do you want to fix a movie?
Yes, I do absolutely want to fix a movie. Please stop. Never sing again, Liam. Thank you. I have some notes.
Welcome, everyone, to I Have Some Notes, the movie podcast with cuts, keeps, punch-ups, and tweaks on mediocre movies. I'm your host, Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
And I'm Greg Beaver.
And today we are discussing the 2013 film Frozen.
Frozen.
Yes, on this chilly late November eve. Boy, howdy, it's cold outside. How about that weather, hey, fellas?
Yeah, it sucks. Do not like. Every winter, at some point, I reach a moment living in Canada where I'm like, why do I live here? This sucks. I hate it.
And we have no monstrous blonde lady to blame it on.
No.
Or do we?
Can this be Danielle Smith's fault somehow? She's not blonde, but she's...
Political humor for people not in Alberta who are listening. Yeah, we're definitely on the bleeding edge of this almost 10-year-old movie.
Yeah, it's been a decade of this seminal classic. But yeah, this is sort of the holiday season fast approaching. We were dancing around which Christmas or holiday movies we wanted to do, and we're just like, you know what? People have asked for this one. It's everyone's seen it. It's wintry, maybe not Christmassy, but it's wintry. So this is our offering for. In the same way Jaws was barely a Halloween movie, this is barely a Christmas movie.
Look, and we can only do so many diehards.
Yeah. Have you guys done diehards before I hopped on?
Yes. Die Hard 2 we did.
We did Die Hard 2, yeah.
That was one of those famous movies where I just basically praised it the entire time and had no notes for it.
Of course, Frozen, like Scott said, 2013. We're coming up on a decade, the Frozen decade. Directed by Chris Buck and Jennifer Lee, written by Chris Buck and Jennifer Lee, songs by Robert Lopez and Kristen Anderson Lopez. They married. Based on The Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen.
Loosely,
yeah.
Very loosely.
Yeah. Starring Kristen Bell as Anna, Idina Menzel as Elsa, Jonathan Groff as Kristoff, and apparently Sven, according to Wikipedia. Josh Gad as Olaf, Santino Fontana as Hans, and Alan Tudyk as Duke.
Yay, Alan Tudyk.
Mm-hmm.
As the Duke?
As the Duke. That was the mustache guy, right?
Yeah.
Nice. Before we get into it, I actually kind of wanted to ask you guys, because you're dads, you have kids, you have Frozen-aged children. I always ask at the top of the show, hey, have you seen this before? So I guess that's my first question. Have you seen this before with your kids or perhaps alone?
I've definitely seen it before. Nita quite likes this movie. It predates both of my children. Though it does not predate me going to Disney World on an adult trip with friends. And there was a big Frozen to-do when we were there. And by the end of it, we were already kind of sick of it.
Greg?
Yeah, my daughter catches the Let It Go song every once in a while on YouTube. I have sat through the movie once with her, which is part of the reason why I wanted to do it. So I was like, I watched it, I was like, this isn't that great. Yeah. This is my second go round, but my daughter has not reached the point yet where she can watch movies beginning to end, so I have not had to watch it over and over and over again just yet.
Yeah. My kids are of an age where they both quite like Coco and Encanto, which I have seen multiple times, but thankfully they were a little late to the Frozen party, so haven't had to repeatedly sit through that one.
Amazing. Yeah, this weirdly was my second time watching it as well because I briefly hung out with like a 6-year-old for like 4 hours about 5 years ago with my ex. We were babysitting her nephew and he's like, we're watching Frozen. And I'm like, is this just what happens when you hang out with a kid for more than 4 hours? You have to watch Frozen.
It's in the contract. Yeah.
Yeah. I get the question I wanted to ask you though. How, as dads, how do you approach watching movies with your kids? Like, are there things you look for? Are there things where it's like a hard no? How do you handle watching stuff on repeat? Like what is it like being a dad showing your kids movies? Cause I don't have kids. I don't know. And this seems like, yeah.
Well, I think at this point I'm just introducing her to things that I already kind of like. So stuff like Moana, I've shown to my daughter. It's weird because like YouTube kind of like changes the calculation on a lot of stuff because like they tend to watch like a lot of really short form stuff for a very long time rather than sitting through full movies. I don't think I've really looked for anything specific in a movie, just like, you know, if it's bright and it's colorful and it's got some good songs in it, I think that's generally something that she'll take a liking to. And yeah, but usually it's just like, I like this movie, I'm going to see if you like it. And that's about as far as I've thought about it.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. A lot of children's media is very short form. Like a lot of the shows that my kids really like are literally 15 minutes long. And they'll sit and just scroll through like kids' YouTube and watch like a dozen videos. And that's fine. Because, I mean, even in our day, that was the Sesame Street format, right? Like a lot of little shorts over the course of an hour-long program, because kids have that limited attention span. My son is starting to get to the age where he can really start to appreciate and focus on a film. Almost. And similar to Greg, though, like a lot of the stuff that's come out lately has been pretty decent quality, and so it hasn't been torturous to watch. Again, Encanto and Coco are both pretty good movies. Or at least maybe I just haven't gotten sick of them yet.
Yeah.
Nice.
My son also goes through like phases, so he'll be into something for a while and he'll like watch it repeatedly, and then he'll just like stop and get into something else for a bit. So I get nice breaks.
I liken it to this. Have you guys ever worked in like, like a mall or retail, you know, and they always play the same radio station, and it might not necessarily be the kind of music that you ordinarily listen to, but you still kind of like, because you're stuck with it, you still kind of look forward to certain songs being replayed. That's kind of how I look at, kids programming. It's like I kind of like pick out the things and the kid songs that I actually dig, and I keep trying to sort of like encourage her to watch the stuff that I can tolerate.
Yeah, I worked at Chapters Indigo for years, and it became like a Stockholm Syndrome thing. We're like, well, this is the least worst Michael Bublé song, so I guess I'm into it.
I'll do you one better. I used to sell electronics at Sears back when Sears was a thing. And we had assorted kids' movies that we would play on repeat to demonstrate the televisions because they're inoffensive films. You can just put them on. So like Ice Age and Shrek, I've seen probably hundreds of times in total. And I'm really not interested in seeing them anymore. I know that Shrek has some cultural cachet, and I've seen it too much. Like,
that's fair. My other question for you, because I know you mentioned Coco and Encanto, but Coco was a Pixar joint, and I love a Pixar movie. I have a really hard time with a lot of the CG, Disney specific stuff. Like once you take Pixar out of the equation, I kind of can't get through it. I got 10 minutes into Encanto, couldn't watch it. So how does this compare to Moana, and how does this compare to Encanto? Which are the straight up Disney ones. Those don't have Pixar's fingers on it.
Encanto is better.
Yeah. I haven't seen Encanto, so I don't know. Moana is, I think, one of my favorite animated movies of all time. So Frozen doesn't compare.
Yeah,
Nice.
Moana's also pretty great. Disney's had a couple good hits over the last couple of years. You should try to get through that starting of Encanto. It is pretty good.
Yeah, I'm also quickly checking my notes here. No, Moana is just a Disney joint.
Yeah.
No Pixar on that one. So yeah, maybe I'd be more inclined to watch Moana than Encanto. But yeah, there's just like, I just find some of the Disney stuff has this like squeaky clean shine on it that is hard to stomach. I liken it to Subway sandwich smell. I'm just like, you can spot a Disney movie from a mile away, and lots of fast food restaurants have their own smell, but that's like McDonald's is Marvel, Pixar is Starbucks. They still have a taste, but I like them a little more, whereas Subway is like kind of trash and its own unique brand of trash. I shouldn't say trash, but like, I don't want to yuck your yum if you like Subway or Disney movies. But yeah, they look like commercials to me, and it's a little much to sit through. But I've heard such good things, I'll maybe give Encanto a second chance. But also, I sat through all of Frozen, so who's to say? Let's go to the trailer and the plot summary, and then we'll get into our thoughts on Frozen.
Summer in the city of Arendelle. It couldn't be warmer. It couldn't be sunnier. But that's about to change. Forever.
Arendelle.
It's completely frozen.
Cold, 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 cold.
A real howler in July, yeah?
The land's covered in eternal snow.
Really?
If we don't do something soon, we'll all freeze to death. You want to talk about a problem? I sell ice for a living.
Ooh, that's a rough business to be in right now. I mean, that is really... that's unfortunate.
My lady.
Whoa, whoa. This is awkward. Not you're awkward, but just because I'm awkward. You're gorgeous. Wait, what?
After nearly killing her younger sister Anna with her icy magic, Princess Elsa's parents, on the terrible advice of idiot trolls, separate the two and teach Elsa to hide who she is and suppress her powers. After her parents mysteriously die in a winter storm at sea, not suspicious at all, Elsa must assume the throne, but the stress triggers a magical outburst. Fearing she's becoming a monster, she flees into the mountains, not realizing she's accidentally set off an eternal winter. Meanwhile, optimistic Anna teams up with a rugged mountain man named Kristoff to find her sister and bring her home. They brave the cold, the mountains, pushy troll matchmakers, and an enchanted snowman, all in an effort to save the kingdom from the cold and the treachery unfolding in their absence.
So, Frozen isn't a bad movie. I don't like it's fine, like you said in the chat, Liam. It's just whatever. Like
it's fine.
It's perfectly serviceable, but like I don't know. There's things that irk me, and fundamentally, I don't buy most of what this movie is selling. Like, I don't buy into Anna and Elsa's relationship because nothing about it feels natural. Like,
spoiler alert. One of my big fixes has to do with that, as usual, Greg. Tiptoeing into my fixes.
Like, Anna's separated from her sister for like a decade, and that seems to have no effect on her or how she feels about Elsa, which is just weird. I mean, there could be resentment and jealousy there in between the two, and instead there's nothing, right? So I assume that's something that you're going to fix there, Scott. But like, I also don't buy that anyone in this movie is ever in any real peril. Like, you think about like the kingdom, like the inhabitants of the kingdom when everything gets frozen, like they seem to weather that fine enough. And then when Anna and Kristoff are struggling against the giant snowman, and they're dangling, the snowman is dangling them off a cliff, their solution to that problem is just to fall to the bottom. Undercutting all the stakes that had been initially set up in that scene.
Even when they cop to being like, well, I guess we'll take our chances with falling, he grabs them out of the air just to yell in their face, get out and don't come back, and then lets them to continue to fall. Like, it's pretty toothless snow monster.
And this one really got me. Like, they teased multiple times that Olaf can melt. And at no point does it actually occur or have any effect on the plot. Right? Like, there's no sort of, like, sad moment where he has, like, his, like, Frosty the Snowman kind of moment or whatever. And maybe they feel like that's too trite, I guess. Fair enough. But, like, it's just, like, if you're going to tease it that much, like, take it all the way home. And finally, I don't buy the world that the filmmakers have created here. It's dull. And it doesn't feel like lived in. And we sort of like touched on this when you were talking about this, Liam, before the trailer summary, is like, you know, it feels like product. And that, like, this movie more than any other Disney movie that I've watched really does feel that way. And like, it's not particularly good looking. Like, particularly when you consider, like, Monsters University came out the same year that this movie came out. And it looks infinitely better. Infinitely better.
Weird. I noticed that too. It sounds like such a pedantic thing to point out, but the CG kind of looks cheap. Like or not cheap, but like you can see the edges. You can see the like, yeah.
Yeah. There's something about the character models that really bug me, and I think it's within the eyes. Like the eyes feel like they're part of the facial sphere rather than a sphere on their own. And like that just doesn't look right to me. And I didn't like there are some characters where they've done it correctly. Like I think the reindeer looks really good. Sven, I think he looks really good. I think technically Olaf looks good, even though I don't totally love that character design. But I think, you know, the fundamentals of it are okay. But all the human characters like don't look great to me.
That's much like the George of the Jungle one. You've pointed out something I noticed but didn't notice. Yeah, the eyes look like they're part of the head model. They're not their own feature. Like the way a nose sticks out, the eye should stick out, and the eyes look more painted on. Yeah.
Yeah. It looked like I wrote in my notes that like Frozen to me looks like the cinematic equivalent of a knockoff Barbie playset. but I do prefer your analogy to the smell of Subway. I think that's much funnier.
Encanto looked the same to me, where I was like, this looks like a commercial for a Barbie doll set. Look, we're three grown men talking about Frozen. We can dunk on this all day. Let's start with what we did like about it.
I think we've already started, and we did not start with what we liked about it.
Well, that's why not start, but you know what I mean. Let's sing it some praise before we rip this.
I like two major plot elements, even if I don't think the plot necessarily sticks its own landing. I take that back. The plot kind of sticks its landing. It goes where it wants to go. It does it competently. It's just kind of meh. But I do like that they subvert the whole kind of love at first sight thing with Prince Hans. And I do like that the true love story is a love between sisters as opposed to a more conventional love story. I think that was them consciously deconstructing some of kind of Disney's traditional princess mythology and in an interesting way. Whether or not they succeeded fully depends on whether or not you like the movie, I suppose. But I like that they went there.
Big time. One of the best aspects for sure. Even though this will contradict some of my fixes, I did like the music. It had a big Broadway element. The two people who wrote the songs have a background in writing Broadway music. I'm a theater kid. I like a Broadway song.
Disney, in fairness, or not, Disney likes to bring in Broadway writers now because they always have an eye towards all of their films making it to Broadway now. That's actually something, that's legitimately something that is in the back of their mind. They're really like, if this is a hit, it's going to be on stage. That was the case with Frozen. So, yeah.
It shows. It really, it follows. It is more like a Broadway musical than a Disney musical.
Disney made bank on The Lion King, on Beauty and the Beast, and so
Little
nowadays,
Mermaid.
every movie they come out with now definitely has an eye towards, could we then adapt this to Broadway?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the calculations you make when you're an entertainment empire, eh?
Yep.
Yeah, really.
I like the sequence with was he kind of Swedish, the Swedish sauna guy?
Yeah, there's some decent jokes in the movie.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of like when the movie was sort of at its funniest, because you have like, we have this gruff Sven character. No, not Sven. What was his name? Christoph. He comes in, and like him and Anna have some immediate tension, and the Swedish guy is kind of playing referee between it all and stuff. That was fun. That was kind of a neat sequence. The Let It Go song, that sequence is pretty good. That's the best song, I think, of the whole movie. The rest of the songs I did not like at all, but that one, I'll admit, is pretty good.
Interesting, because I quite liked the matchmaking troll song. It was kind of fun. It had it was catchy. He's a fixer upper or whatever. The other one, when Anna and Hans are meeting, and they're kind of like, oh, we finish each other's sandwiches. That one was I like that one, but specifically, and unfortunately, it's going to lead into me complaining about something. But my favorite song in the whole movie is Olaf's song about wanting to experience summer. I just thought that was very inspired. This whole thing of he's like, well, I'm a snowman. I've never seen summer. I want to see summer, not knowing he's going to melt. That was my favorite bit of the whole movie. I found that really endearing. And then Olaf proceeds to be probably the least funny character I've seen in an animated movie in years. I was so grateful for the Swedish guy you mentioned, because I'm like, this man, Olaf the Snowman is carrying all of the
you got big Jar Jar energy?
Yeah, he's got big Jar Jar. Oh man, that's not fair to Jar Jar, man. Like that's like all of the characters have funny moments. There's scenes where each of the characters says or does something funny. Christoph talking about, hey, you just met this guy an hour ago and you're going to marry him. Anna's a very likable, relatable main character, so she's got some funny moments. Funny situation she finds herself in. Holy shit, every joke that comes out of Olaf's mouth after the song is like broad as broad can be. Going back to what I was saying in the Ghostbusters episode, I hate it when jokes are explained or like telegraphed from a mile away. Good Lord, does he not say anything funny?
It's funny the way that character kind of shows up, because when Anna and Christoph are walking around, or walking towards, or up the mountain towards Elsa's palace, there's a moment where I literally thought in my head, this movie needs like a plucky, sidekick or something to like, because these two characters aren't that interesting together. And then suddenly Olaf appears out of nowhere, and that just kind of made me laugh that the movie was thinking the exact same thing I was thinking right at the same time. There's parts of Olaf that kind of work. I think it's really funny to have a snowman character and a reindeer who wants to eat his nose. I think that could have been worth more comedic beats than they chose to use it for. But that's like, it's a little clever thing that they snuck in there. It's and they smartly established that he likes carrots right off the bat, I think, when the first time you meet him, right? So yeah, I don't know. The character could have been good. It's just like it wasn't, and I think at least part of the reason for that is that he just appears out of nowhere. There's no great context for his appearance, other than like, oh, do you remember Olaf? That's the thing that's the snowman that Elsa made for Anna or whatever. I don't know. Like he just doesn't work, and he doesn't have anything to do. I think is probably the biggest problem. Is that he just kind of rolls around and gets thumped, and the movie thinks it's funny, but it isn't. But he has no bearing on the plot, and like you probably want that character to be part of pulling the heartstrings at some point, and he doesn't serve that function either.
Maybe if he melted.
Exactly. Easy. Just have a melt.
Another positive point, just to throw out, whether or not you like the characters, I do think that the voice cast is pretty solid.
Oh yeah,
sure.
I don't think anybody phones it in. I think everybody's well cast. Great. They're great. They're great together.
Yeah, I like Kristen Bell a lot. As I mentioned when we read the cast list off, it's Alan Tudyk is great. He's an excellent voice actor, and I think he's sort of like little known as a voice actor. But he just because his voice is so unrecognizable when he's doing voice acting.
He started to step up to fill in the role that Frank Welker will one day leave. Mm-hmm. In that, especially in Disney movies, if you hear an animal noise, it's probably coming from Alan Tudyk.
Right.
Yeah, because he was like the chicken in Moana or something, wasn't he?
Yep, he's a toucan or two in Kanto. Like he's started to do animal noises, which I mean, that's Frank Welker's business. He's Fred Jones from Scooby-Doo and every animal you've ever heard on a cartoon. Except those played by Alan Tudyk.
And he's also Megatron.
And Nibbler.
Oh, yeah.
While we're on the subject of animals, actually, and going back to Sven a little bit, there's a trope that's prevalent in Disney movies, where they're like, you know what's a relatable, fun animal? A dog. So what if the animal that's supposed to be fun and relatable is basically a dog? And Sven is a dog. Like, Sven is a dog, right? Like, he's a dog dressed as a reindeer. He's a dog. Yeah. They do that a lot. What if this pig was a dog? What if this raccoon was a dog? What if this footstool was a dog?
What if this elephant in the jungle was a dog?
What if this dragon was a cat? Right? Like, it's, I don't know. Yeah, it's an easy way of getting people to sort of relate easier to those animal characters, for sure.
Yeah, lots of people have dogs. Not a lot of people have reindeers, but yeah. Only one I can think of, and he's got 8 of them.
I have to imagine that a reindeer would be an asshole of a pet. I think they'd be very much fun.
I did like the way he sort of, instead of making him a talking reindeer, they just had Kristoff like talk for him.
Yeah,
kind of the way I do to my cat. It was a nice touch.
Yeah, it's like there's lots of little things to pick out. Frozen, like it's not an entirely like it's certainly a watchable film. Yeah,
it's a fine middle of the road Disney film.
You could argue, like, as a kid's film, that's kind of like it's served its purpose at that point. Like they as long as it's got some moments for kids to cling on to, that's all they really need, and it shows because Frozen is like its own cultural institution now, right? So they've done their job, even if the bulk of the movie is kind of just okay.
But of course, from a screenwriting perspective and from adults having to watch it, the plot definitely has some holes, some oversights, some oversimplifications. Do we want to just get into our fixes now then? We want to talk about what we do to tighten this up and make it a film parents would be more happy to watch 100 times. In Alberta, you get to choose where you buy your energy from. If you choose Park Power, your money stays here. Plus, Park Power shares its profits with local not-for-profits that are working to make a difference in their communities. Shopping local is very important to Park Power's owner, Chris Kazaski. And we love local here at the Alberta Podcast Network, so it's a great fit. Learn more at parkpower.ca. Alberta Blue Cross understands that running a small business is tough, and they understand that business owners in Alberta are busy. Let Alberta Blue Cross give you peace of mind with a group benefit plan. They offer health, dental, life, and disability coverage for your employees. Alberta Blue Cross group benefit plans are easy to manage anywhere, anytime, and on any device, making it easy for you and your employees to access. I can speak from personal experience. My employer provides us with a Alberta Blue Cross group benefit plan, and it's easy as heck to go in to the website, get my claims, find out when they're coming, get direct deposit. Personally can advocate it's easy as heck. I appreciate that my employers use it. Would you believe I don't podcast professionally? To learn more and explore your options, head to ab.bluecross.ca. Welcome back to I Have Some Notes. We're talking Frozen. Scott, how would you improve this from a narrative perspective? A script perspective?
The glaring flaw that I see in this movie, and Greg touched on this right off the top, is the relationship between Elsa and Anna. And the reason for that is because it's entirely one-sided in this movie. Anna chases Elsa for the entire film. And if you're trying to tell a story about sisterly love, to me, it needs to be reciprocated earlier in the film from Elsa, and it's not. Anna chases her from the time that they're kids and Elsa gets closed away by their folks to the bitter end of this film when she sacrifices her life for her, and Elsa doesn't reciprocate until that point. And I get that they're trying to say, well, Elsa's showing her love in a different way by trying to keep herself distant, to keep Anna safe. That doesn't work for me. It needs to be reciprocated. And so and this is a really rough fix, but I feel like rather than have Hans go and capture Elsa, you have Kristoff and Olaf go to Elsa after she's injured Anna again. And rather than have her life be in peril because her heart is turning to ice, have her turning into, metaphorically, an ice queen. You have Elsa's magic freeze her heart, and now because it's magic and it's fantasy, Anna no longer cares. She goes back to Arendelle and she no longer cares about anything. And so the bad actors in Arendelle can still do stuff because they can make use of an Anna who no longer cares. Kristoff and Olaf recognize this isn't Anna anymore. And Elsa's magic has done this. They go back up the mountain and tell Elsa what happened. Elsa takes responsibility for it, and she willingly comes down the mountain to try to help Anna, to try to undo what she did, to try to take responsibility for her magic being out of control and try to actively get it back under control. And then that means in the back half of the movie, you have Elsa chasing Anna rather than Anna chasing Elsa. And you can still build up to the big climactic finish, the same finish where the true love between sisters melts the frozen heart, right? But I feel like if you let Elsa reciprocate the love and take responsibility for the damage she's done earlier in the film, she becomes more sympathetic, and the relationship between the sisters works for me better. So, that's kind of my rough idea. I
love that.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. I can even, it kind of spins into my fix if I can go, Greg. One of the problems I had with it was the villain, Hans and the Duke, the sort of two bad actors back in Arendelle, whatever it was.
Arendelle?
Whatever, the kingdom.
I may have misspoken.
Back in the kingdom.
Rivendell? I don't know.
So those two characters, I thought the foreshadowing was very poor for Hans's heel turn. Mm-hmm. I saw it coming just because I'm like, well, this movie needs some kind of it's weird that she just hands over the keys to the kingdom and then leaves. So of course that guy's gonna do subterfuge, and my simple note was just like, foreshadow that better, even though I saw it coming a mile away. Because I'm an adult who's watching this movie. I understand tropes and cliches. But I think you could have hinted at Hans' misdeeds better. But with your fix, Scott, you still tease it out a little bit. And then, instead of being literally blasted with ice magic in the brain, she's metaphorically frozen in her heart. And she sits there while the Duke and Hans run roughshod over the kingdom.
Yeah, because she doesn't
give a shit. That's way better.
Yeah, because her heart is frozen, and then Kristoff and Olaf have more motivation to act in the second act because they're like, this isn't the girl we met. Something's up. Yeah. We're going to go back and talk to that ice queen up on the mountain and see what happened. And then when they tell that means that they're the impetus to get Elsa back down the mountain, and she doesn't get captured. She has agency. She's like, oh crap. Blocking myself away didn't do anything. It just hurt things worse. I need to go and make things better.
Yeah, it's worse to isolate yourself and turn Anna's heart to ice than it is to literally blast her with magic.
Yeah.
Like self-fulfilling prophecy.
Like thematically that works really well. And I think importantly you've identified the major issue with the film is that nobody really makes a choice and change. In the end, like we were saying, like Anna's journey is the same throughout the entire film. She's always chasing Elsa, and then in the end, she does exactly what you expect her to do, which is to sacrifice herself. Like she's at no point in the film are you like, like Anna wouldn't sacrifice herself. You know that she would implicitly, and Elsa's just kind of like along for the ride. So your fix quite eloquently fixes the problem with Elsa, where she doesn't have any sort of change to make or any sort of emotional journey.
Yeah. And I think this works for it. And I think you could still have the big third act climax be maybe Hans and the Duke are trying to stop Elsa from interfering and stop her from fixing Anna, because an ice-hearted Anna is someone they can control. And then that showdown snaps Anna out of it long enough that she makes the sacrifice. So you still have her step up in the moment when you think she wouldn't. Her love for her sister still comes through. She sacrifices herself. That melts her heart. Yeah. And then Elsa's made a journey. Anna's made a journey. Everybody's had a journey. The bad guys get defeated.
I think it's interesting that you went that way, because initially I had thought that I wanted to give Elsa that sort of arc where she got to make the change. But then when I started putting down my rewrites, I ended up changing Anna more. So I'll just go through what I thought I would do. So
before you do, I have one question for Scott about this pitch, just because I don't want to lose this thought.
Sure.
Sorry. It is relevant to what Scott pitched. In this version that you've suggested, Scott, do we lose the subversion of the true love's first kiss? No, actually it's an act of love. Is that harder to telegraph?
I don't think so.
Harder to... No?
I don't think so, because I think that you could still, an act of true love, you could still have maybe Anna perceive Kristoff came up the mountain with Anna the first time before she froze her heart. So maybe there's something there. Maybe Olaf, who is nothing but pure love for Anna, maybe he can do something. Her goal, I think, is to get them back down the mountain to do something, not realizing that it's sisterly love that's going to do the trick.
Yeah, I think it would just take a little more clever writing to get that idea across to
you can
an
still,
audience of all ages, but I think
you can still get that there. Yeah.
So, sorry, Greg. I didn't want to lose that.
Oh, no worries. So I thought that, my changes kind of start right off the top, which is, I didn't love the friendly troll family. So the first thing I was like, I want to do something with them. I want to get rid of that troll family and replace them with a single giant troll who is menacing. So when Anna and Elsa's parents approach the troll for help, it feels more like a deal with the devil kind of thing. The troll tells the parents that there'll be consequences to changing Anna's fate, and they choose to go ahead and make the sacrifice and later die in that freak shipwreck, right? So that way, the whole thing starts to become about sacrifice. Their parents made the sacrifice. Now, eventually, someone has to make, the sisters have to sacrifice for each other. But this does two things that it'll make the initial incident more exciting and dramatic, in my opinion. And it sets up the idea that sorcery is dangerous and reinforces the need for Elsa to hide her gifts. Because one of the issues I have is that the sorcery is frowned upon in this universe, but we as the audience don't really get a sense of why or how, why the townsfolk are freaked out about it, other than just I guess it's just unnatural, so reinforcing that I think a little bit helps. And then you can have townspeople whispering about this troll in the forest and stuff like that or whatever, and that could set up a second meeting with them. The second thing I would do is to not separate Anna and Elsa as they grow up. So instead, Anna, healed and unencumbered, is out enjoying life, while Elsa has to remain isolated to protect Anna and the kingdom from herself. So this fuels resentment in Elsa, that ultimately explodes when Anna impulsively and selfishly decides to get married to the person she's barely knows, right? Yeah. So the whole thing is just building up Anna as kind of this sort of aloof person who's not really super in touch with Elsa's needs and kind of a little bit selfish. That way, she has to learn to understand and respect Elsa's sacrifice. And that allows her to make that choice and change at the end, when she sacrifices herself, in the end by protecting Anna. So she's the one who gets more agency overall in my version. So I like Scott's fix quite a bit. I'm not necessarily married to one or the other, but
and I mean, there's definitely elements of yours that can certainly be easily massaged into mine.
Sure,
I love the more dangerous troll in particular. I think that's really good. The deal with the devil kind of undercurrent and the danger involved in the magic ties into her freezing Anna's heart in the second act of my version.
Sure, yeah. Yeah,
So,
and the idea that like it's dangerous and then it turns Anna evil, in your version, that actually kind of goes really well with there being, So I just like the idea that like the kingdom is a little bit more perilous, right? Because I think that when the entire land gets frozen, it feels like the entire kingdom is attacking the inhabitants instead of just Elsa herself.
Yeah, and it feels like there's some good stakes there as well. It's not just Anna's going to die and some jerk is going to take over. In this case, it's Anna's heart's been turned to ice, and she's going to go back and be a terrible queen now,
right?
And let bad people rule the kingdom because Elsa's
she's going to continue to be selfish,
right?
Yeah.
Like, because her frozen heart is going to just amplify all of her worst traits, right? Mm-hmm. So if she's established to be maybe a little selfless and a little careless at the beginning, not dangerously so, but then that gets amplified when her heart gets
right.
frozen.
Yeah,
and gives a much more meaningful role for the the villains to do.
Yep, and it gives Elsa the agency to come back down the mountain herself to try to fix what she broke. Because at the moment, she gets kind of a free pass in the movie.
Yeah. And I like you said something earlier about using, like, maybe Olaf has something to do with that. Like, he is the symbolic manifestation of their love somehow. Like, it just gives him something
because
more to do.
he was the snowman that they built as children before all of this started. And so, like, I like the idea that maybe he does kind of represent that sisterly love. And so maybe that's why Elsa thinks to take him back to Anna, because maybe you can do something, but it's not him. If anything, Olaf is bringing her back down the mountain so they can reconnect, right?
Yeah.
So he gets a little more to do. Yeah.
I dig all of that. My fixes, other than the villains, just kind of foreshadowing that better, were much more specific. I know this is set in some sort of fake Northern European, like, Icelandic,
Scandinavian
kind of looking. But there is no need for all of the character models to be white.
Sure, yeah, I was definitely thinking
there is not a person of color in this entire movie. And there's no need for that. It's a made-up world. It's a fantasy world.
As I understand it, they do kind of address that in Frozen 2. There are some characters of color, I believe.
Well, that's because probably someone pointed it out and they're like, oh, fuck, you're right. That was just very glaring. I'm like, it's a cartoon and it's in a magical world. There is no need for all of these people to be white. So that was just a really easy fix, but an obvious one. And then my other one was the songs. Because a lot of they are good songs if you like Broadway music, but they are bad songs if your kids really like them and play them on repeat. And early on in the movie, it starts with like chanting. It starts with this very mystic, non-English chanting, that I found quite endearing. I thought it gave it a real air of mysticism. And then we go right into these like Broadway hits. And so Disney has a history of hiring known musicians to write the score, right? So Elton John, Lion King, Phil Collins, Tarzan, etc.
And Manuel Miranda.
Precisely. Broadway guy, but still. So there is a band, I don't know if you're familiar with it, called Sigur Rós. They're an Icelandic band. They're fairly famous in certain circles. Sigur Rós, if you read their name phonetically, some folks might not know. Sigur Rós is how you pronounce it, but Sigur Rós might be how you
recognizable
know them.
For people.
Recognizable if you've only ever seen it written. And their whole shtick is that they bounce between singing in English, singing in Icelandic, and singing in their own kind of like made up gibberish language. in a way that's very endearing and haunting and is sort of like their claim to fame. I'm in the Wikipedia here to make sure. Non-linguistic vocalizations the band has termed von Lenska. They just have their own like language they like to sing in. And I thought it would be interesting if you maybe let them take a pass at some of the songs.
Sure.
Kind of interesting, kind of weird. I don't know if it's a fix, but when I heard that chanting, I was like, is See Her Rose working on this soundtrack? Make of that what you will, but I was like, where's my Phil Collins? Give me Icelandic folk rock band See Her Rose, doing their weird non-linguistic grunts and chanting. Could have made for a slightly more unique take on Let It Go.
I kind of wonder if, because there isn't really star power behind this movie, right? Like, I mean, Kristen Bell's in it, but like at this time, she's not a big star. I kind of wonder if Frozen was a bit more of a surprise hit for Disney.
I think it
kind of took them back.
Yeah.
That because I'm willing to bet, like, if I watch Frozen 2, it'll look a lot better and look like it has more money behind it.
Though it does, according to Anita, look better.
But as a movie, it's not better? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Anita, who does like Frozen quite a lot, did not care for Frozen 2.
I think I've heard other people say that as well. I wonder if it has, I'm just checking right now to see if it has more star power behind it. Not really. I think Alpha Molina's in it, but no, like, slam dunk names.
They didn't get Chris Pratt to voice Mario for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, way ahead of its time.
Yeah, I think we've certainly fixed this. Now I'm interested to watch Frozen 2 to see if everyone else came to these same conclusions, and that's what Frozen 2 is just like, oh, here's Frozen but better.
Yeah.
I say that like I'm interested, but there's hell will freeze over before I watch Frozen 2. I'll watch Encanto and Coco and Moana first. Maybe even the one about the pants. I haven't seen the one about the pants yet either. But our list, let's go to listener comments. Now our listeners obviously had some thoughts. Thank you to everyone who contributed. We appreciate it when you share your thoughts with us. New perspectives, always welcome. Danica LeBlanc says, less to zero singing. My God, those songs were the worst part.
Me and Danica agree.
I don't know if nonverbal Icelandic made up chanting would improve it, but at least a lateral move.
I think a lot of the current kind of backlash against a lot of the Frozen songs is actually due to how overplayed they are. Mm-hmm. More than their actual quality. They're objectively pretty good, but I mean, we've all heard them a million times, and they're not that good.
Josh Scar says, ooh, that's the son of Hulk. Josh Scar says, at the very least, you need to rewrite the king's interpretation of Pabby's warning for little Elsa, either by making Pabby's warning more cryptic, or have him intentionally mislead the king because he can see the future and knows this is the only way to truly save Elsa.
That's kind of what Greg touched on, the idea that the troll is a little more dangerous, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had completely forgotten there were trolls in this at all until the second time I had watched it. And I noticed obviously this came first. The trolls in the Trolls movie from DreamWorks, Trolls and Trolls World Tour, look a lot like these trolls. And I wonder if that was deliberate. Like, because this is such a big movie, like you say troll to me, I'm a Dungeons and Dragons guy. I think of like a regenerating ogre monster. Mm-hmm. But because this movie was so popular, I wonder if DreamWorks assumed that in the popular zeitgeist, trolls look like this, and then made their Trolls movie look pretty damn similar to these trolls.
Wasn't DreamWorks' Trolls more based on like the little troll dolls?
Yes, but they don't look anything like the little trolls. Other than the little troll dolls from the 90s are their own thing. The trolls in the DreamWorks Trolls movie look like these trolls with trolls from the 90s wacky hair.
That's fair.
I just wonder if that was deliberate, if they were either
kind of riding the Frozen train,
or just like trying to piggyback on an already understood aesthetic for modern cartoon trolls.
Maybe, yeah.
I love this podcast. I love the conversations we have. As that sentence came out of my mouth, I'm like, I love this. Tack says, first, punch up the dialogue, make the characters fun and relatable to contrast the icy cold outside. Next, we need more scenes of the lodge to get a better sense of the geography. Really dig into the dire hopelessness of their situation. And if we're gonna have an R rating...
Yeah. Elsa needs to gack some people. That's what Erin and I were thinking, like, when she's in that scene where the guards come up to her palace or whatever, and she's got them, like, lined up against a wall with a bunch of icicles, and we were both just like, yeah, just stab them, get them.
Yeah. It gets intense. Yeah, the two weird guard guys who are working for the Duke.
Yeah.
I also just agree with Tack. Punch up the dialogue, specifically Olaf. I hated every joke he made. Someone should have taken a pass at his material, or it was just so broad. It was cringy broad. Well. Andrew Craig says, fill it with terrible fucking songs my kids only want to hear once instead of every night for 3 damn years. Yes. Are your kids fans of Icelandic folk band Si Rewrote?
Need to introduce them to that.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we identified some flaws in the movie, and we gave a good pass at fixing them. Some good listener comments.
As did our listeners, yeah.
Yeah. I hope I hope when listeners pick up on this one that because I heard a few comments that like, oh, this is not a great suggestion for your podcast, but it's like we always kind of find a way, and sometimes movies like this where like you would assume that there's nothing to bend or correct about it or whatever. Like sometimes those end up being the most fun to play with because a lot of the elements are there and having fun rearranging them. Whereas sometimes with a worse movie, it's more difficult because you've got to invent new devices yourself. But this one just has things that's already there that you can already rearrange and put in better places.
Just needed to tighten up the bolts on this one.
Yeah. Or even if it's not necessarily better, as you were describing that, Greg, I was thinking about old Lego sets, how they'd be like, here's the Lego set, follow the instructions, but also with the pieces included in this kit, you can do a variation on it.
Yeah.
It's a slightly different pirate ship or a slightly different Hogwarts castle. Maybe that's what we've done here. Maybe this is a lateral move. But yeah, you're correct. It's fun to rearrange the pieces and see if you can improve it with what's in front of us. As opposed to like, oh, it's just for fucking, thank you again to everyone who commented. And of course, please follow us on social media, facebook.com/I have some notes, at I have some notes on Twitter. Still around. When we did the New Mutants joke or New Mutants episode, we were joking that Twitter's going in the tank. Still technically exists. We haven't migrated to Mastodon or whatever yet. And of course, we're on Instagram at I have some notes pod. Don't forget to put the pod in there. We couldn't secure I have some notes on Instagram.
Actually, funny story.
It is
we did, but Greg forgot the password.
Yeah, so I can't get into it.
I didn't mean to out you, Greg. Sorry.
Yeah, so if you know my password circa 2019, I would love to hear it.
Incredible. And of course, wherever you're listening to this, please give us a subscription, a rate, a review on your favorite podcast app.
Hey, Frozen is a musical. You might like other musicals, perhaps even Stephen Sondheim musicals. You can check out Putting It Together. Each episode, Kyle Marshall and a guest take a deep dive into a different Stephen Sondheim song. You can check out that and more right now at albertapodcastnetwork.com.
And tune in 2 weeks when we'll be taking on our very first Edgar Wright film, which almost feels like sacrilege, but we'll be taking on Last Night in Soho.
Yes, this one was recommended hot on the heels of our New Mutants episode, and we're excited to jump right into it. So thank you to the listener who suggested that. Until then, I am your host, Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
I'm Greg Beaver. Keep watching the skies.